Last Saturday, my life abruptly changed when my family suddenly disintegrated. I won't go into the details of this sad story, except to say that I was left completely alone and without any means of support. With my last pennies, I rented a small one-room apartment in a house on the outskirts of town. The landlady was a thin, stooped old woman in her 70s. When she opened the door to me, I immediately noticed a great deal of anxiety in her wrinkled face, as if something was troubling her. I thought maybe she had a health problem, but I did not ask her anything because I was a complete stranger to her. For about 10 minutes, she showed me around the room, explaining where everything was. At one point, she suddenly turned to me and said in a low voice, "When you go to bed, be sure to close the windows and curtains. Always lock them, otherwise it will be very bad." I was a little surprised by this strange request, but calmly replied, "Okay, thanks for the warning, but it's very dark here at night." The old woman muttered in reply, "They recently put new bright lights in the courtyard. The light shines through the windows like daylight." I thanked her, although I suspected that she was hiding something from me. After I paid the rent, the landlady left the apartment in a hurry. I locked the door behind her and began to sort through my belongings. Then I cleaned the place. Judging by the dust and cobwebs in the corners, no one had lived here or cleaned it in a long time. In the evening around 6 o'clock, I finished my chores and decided to go outside for a walk and buy some groceries for dinner. I quickly put on a warm coat and walked out of the house. There was a small grocery store nearby, so I didn't have to go far. It was getting dark, and I was suddenly overcome with a heavy gloom and an inexplicable uneasiness, as if something was squeezing my chest. I quickly bought some groceries and started back. As I approached the house, I was surprised to see the people in our yard closing their windows and curtains. I walked around the yard. Everywhere, on every floor, the same thing was happening. It was very strange. The windows were closed, even where the light from the street lamps didn't reach. There is definitely something wrong here, I thought to myself as I stepped into the entrance hall. The first night at my new home was exciting. I made tea and instant noodles, but I had no appetite. When I turned on my phone, I looked at old family photos and thought about my hard fate. The strange behavior of the landlady and the tenants slipped my mind. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a quick movement outside the window, and I was immediately seized with a wild, inexplicable horror. I sat for 2 hours without closing my eyes, staring into the darkness outside the window, but I saw nothing else suspicious. At last, I lay on my side, keeping my eyes on the window. After a few minutes, I began to fall asleep, almost forgetting myself, when suddenly there was an aggressive barking of dogs outside, which then turned into a pitiful whimpering. I became terribly curious as to what was going on out there. I got out of bed, went to the window and saw the dogs running back and forth in the yard. After watching them for a few minutes, I drew the curtain and tried to sleep. With anxious thoughts about the strange behavior of the dogs, I fell asleep in the morning. When I woke up in the morning, I remembered that I had some work to do. After lying there for a while, I reluctantly got up, went to the window and pulled back the curtain. A palm print on the glass came into my field of vision. I rubbed my eyes to make sure I wasn't dreaming. In the corner of the window, a handprint was clearly visible on the frozen glass. I was surprised because I lived on the 3rd floor. The handprint on the glass did not let me rest. I almost forgot that I had to go to work to settle things. I quickly packed my things and left. I returned home in the evening and forgot all about the curtains and the handprint. It was getting dark, and as I approached the house, I noticed that all the windows were tightly curtained, except mine. As night fell, I heard the dogs barking again, but much louder than the last time. I literally broke into howls, and I began to be gripped by a deep fear. I looked out the window and froze. There was something that looked like a person, but wasn't a person, standing at the bottom of the driveway. I stared intently at the face, but I couldn't see it. The head was of an incomprehensible shape, the arms unnaturally long. It stood still as I suddenly caught its piercing gaze. What is it? And what does it want? The creature moved towards the entrance of my house with a slow, smooth gait. I realized that if this creature got me, I would be dead. I quickly pulled the curtain back and waited. It must have been about 5 minutes before I gently opened the curtain, and then I was struck with a chilling horror as I saw the long, bony fingers clinging to the window frame, and then the face of the creature. It was pale gray with sunken eye sockets and a narrow slit in its mouth. It looked at me through the glass with vacant eyes and began methodically tapping at the glass with its long claws as if trying to break through. I jumped away from the window in terror and ran for the exit, but the door wouldn't budge. Meanwhile, there was the sound of shattering glass, and I heard the monster's heavy footsteps. Gathering all my strength, I kicked the door with my foot, ran out onto the landing and slammed the door shut. As I ran down the stairs, I could hear the creature trying desperately to get out of my apartment. Once outside, I looked up at my window. The creature stared at me from the broken window, and then it climbed up the wall and began to climb down, clinging to the wall with its long limbs like a giant spider. I ran as fast as I could. After a few blocks, I stopped to catch my breath, but when I looked back, I saw the thing still crawling in the light of the streetlights. I ran on with the last of my strength. Oh my God, there's a car coming at me! I started waving my arms and screaming for help. The car stopped and the driver opened the door. I jumped on the seat and screamed, "Hurry, get out of here!" As we drove away, I told the driver about the creature. I could tell by the look on his face that he thought I was crazy. We went back to the house, but no one was suspicious. This guy offered me a place to stay. The next day, I came to get my things. I never went back to that house and I never saw that creature again. But sometimes I still dream about his scary face in the broken window.